Welcome to the Queer Spirit Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Venegoni. Here we have conversations with artists, healers, and activists who enliven the LGBTQ communities and who empower our queer spirits to flourish. My guest today is Hank Hivnor. Hank is a New York-based clairvoyant, medium, and a healer, as well as a visual artist. Today we talk about discovering your intuition, the importance of play, and bringing healing into all aspects of everyday life. We also talk about using art as a healing tool, and I even share a story about my own healing experience with Hank. To find out more about Hank and his healing services, go to hankhivnor.com. That's Hank, HIVNOR.com. Hi, Hank. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. Nice to be here.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So, Hank, you are a clairvoyant and a medium, and I wonder if you could start just by giving us a definition of those words for yourself.
Yeah, definitions are helpful, and I'm always trying to define myself because there's a lot of different things I do in sessions, really a whole lot of different things. So I definitely see images, I see pictures, and I see things that are very abstract, and then I kind of interpret them into information that's very clear for people. And it's really a fascinating thing that I do, and I have no idea how I do it. I have some idea, but some of it is pretty out there, and I just kind of go with it, and people have really good results. So, and they come back, and so I thought, okay, I better keep this going, and it's been going for about 26 years. So.
And what about mediumship? I know that there's some different examples of that in the media, and I'm curious what it is for you.
Right. I've had a lot of different experiences. I've had experiences where I've let, beings and people into my body completely. And now I kind of have a percentage system where it's like a really small percentage. I don't really need to let them in very far because I can connect to them. Like if we're talking to somebody's deceased grandmother or lover or something, I can pretty much get on the phone with them without connecting to them. But I did have an experience once. I was upstate New York working at a healing facility, and this woman, her mother had died, and it was just like the angels were there, and I really got this sense that it was okay for the mother to take over my body. And she did for about 30 seconds, and in that time she hugged her daughter, and it was extremely intense. It was like she just needed a human body to hug her daughter, and it was so powerful. But I was definitely out of my comfort zone. I took a huge risk for that. I don't really like to do that too much, I could tell you about other experiences like that if you want. It's,
I think that's good. And when you talk about healing, what do you mean by healing?
Well, I mean that I'm setting an intention to transform someone or enable someone to have some sort of growth or transformation. Sometimes the healings are instantaneous. Sometimes I'm told to tell the person that it may take 3 days or 3 weeks. Sometimes I'm told to tell the person to, go get something or do something or have an experience so that they can have a direct experience with spirit. And also the angels, like if I tell someone to go buy like a blue hat or I don't know, do something, they tell them crazy stuff all the time. Then if they go do it, the angels will notice that they paid attention, that they are enrolled in following through, So that's kind of part of it too.
Well, I will also share for the listeners my own personal healing experience with you, which I don't even know if you remember, but when I first met you it's been probably almost 20 years ago, and I was working as a graphic designer, and I was working in an office sitting at the computer all day. I think I was basically having some pain in my arm and my wrist from carpal tunnel. And you said, here, well, let me do some healing work on you. And you took my hand and you started rubbing the top of my hand, where there wasn't actually, I wasn't feeling pain there, but you started rubbing there with your fingers. And it actually got really hot. And I remember it almost started hurting. And then you stopped. And then you told me that you also got a message from your guides or the angels to change the way I was sitting in my desk. Because I think I was sitting leaning forward or leaning off to the side, and I needed to lean back more and that kind of thing. And the next day, most of the pain was gone, and I started to change the way I sat in my chair, and it was really helpful.
Wow. Well, right on. I'm so thrilled. So glad I could be of service. That's really cool.
Can you share with us a little bit about how you first discovered your intuitive abilities?
Well, I'm really curious about that myself. And so I think about that a lot over the years. And I guess I don't want to say that I'm being insincere by changing my story, but sometimes I think, oh, I was born with this amazing ability because I am different and I do have a sensitivity that's different from other people. But I also grew up in a really stressed out environment where both my parents were pretty volatile people and I was really terrified of them. So I really wanted to be 10 steps ahead of them, especially my dad. When my dad would yell, I would literally shake. I was like a little kid. I was terrified of him. So if I may have been born with it, but I certainly developed it in the school of hard knocks that was my childhood. I also had some really beautiful things happen in my childhood, so it wasn't all bad, and I'm not out to write some kind of tell-all book and trash everyone, because I understand that I chose to be there, and I think it was part of my karma. And then when I got older, like around, I was about 25 years old, I had an awakening because I started reading a lot of Native American books. And those books really spoke to me. I really feel like Native American writers are writing right to your heart. It's like a living book. Like there's books where you read and it's like you're kind of objectified. You're reading something and you're imagining it. And then these books just speak right to you. I started having really vivid dreams and seeing the world very differently, seeing energy, everything. And I was like, wow, this is great. I want to apply this to the world, So I've had a lot of different things happen to me in life that have kind of created these things. I was a really weird kid and I didn't have any friends. And I used to talk to the mirror, and sometimes the mirror would talk back to me and I would just be like, all right, I've also seen lights come out of mirrors. Like I've seen big UFOs flying over the city when no one else is even aware of it. And I just happen to be looking up. And it's like, so I feel like I'm just one of these people that has that vision, I don't know, I'm confused myself.
Well, I want to go back to one of the things you said about feeling like you wanted to be 10 steps ahead of your parents when they were volatile. And I think that's especially common experience for a lot of queer people who experience homophobia and violence and trauma in their environment, that we feel the need to be 10 steps ahead or even just a few steps ahead so we can feel safe and we can preserve ourselves. And I think part of that experience for anyone who experiences any kind of trauma is of a blessing because it can develop more of a sensitivity towards intuition and other kinds of gifts in that way.
Yeah. And then to also be able to kind of create this serenity for ourselves, like creating our own magic bubble for us to feel like the fabulous butterflies that we are, and enjoy all the facets of the sensitivities that we have by creating our own magic world. So there's that too,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And something else that you do a lot of is different kinds of art. And I think that there are ways that being creative and also being sensitive and intuitive intersect a lot. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are about that and experiences are.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I love art. I love color. Color is like vibration. And I make these movies that are like these kaleidoscopic things that definitely affect people's auras. People have told me that. I do acrylic on canvas, just really vibrant colors. And I set intentions with my paintings that they have healing effects on people, sometimes very specific, sometimes more open, And I also started working on a guided meditation series last year. I haven't completed it yet, but it involves guided meditations where people interact with different colors. And then those colors enable them to change their emotions around past traumatic events and all kinds of things. So I'm just so excited about color and art and its healing modalities that can be created out of that.
Yeah.
So awesome.
So I wonder if we could use one of your pieces as an example, so I know people can't see, but I'm going to describe what I see, which is this painting that you've done behind you, which is, it looks like it's a square format, and it's mostly blues and greens and purples, and it's lots of circles and swirls and spirals. And one of the predominant symbols in it is sort of two white circles that are just rings, and then in the middle is a blue circle that's surrounded by a kind of turquoise and green and sky blue and that kind of thing.
Yeah, in the center there's a heart energy. I don't know if you can see that, the faceted thing in the center. And this painting was made in order to heal people's broken hearts, or if you're feeling a little war-torn after a crazy relationship, you can look at this painting and it soothes you and kind of helps you to pull it back together. That's the intention of it.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm real glad it didn't sell because I use it all the time, you know.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. And I like that you're using.
That was my terribly awful dry humor. I apologize.
Yeah, I love that you're creating this art that is also healing.
Yeah, I'm so excited about that. And I'm also working on creating a video where I'm going to use these like balls of light. And I'm teaching a class coming up in June it's a psychic development class. And what I do for people who have never had any experience, I really believe that we're all psychic. So I just believe that. I feel like it's just like a muscle that once you understand its application and once you can give yourself permission to go there, there's a lot of fear around it. But like, I like to use the visualization of balls of light and actually putting intentions into the balls of light and then getting people to start interacting it almost like they're throwing beach balls to each other, you know? And it's so much fun to see the delight in people's faces when they realize that they can be creators of energy and that they can interact with the energetic world. You know, it's like this huge weight lifted for people because it takes people out of feeling powerless, you know, just by society or everything. So I'm super excited about that.
Well, as I was telling you before we started the recording, one of the things that I've really appreciated about you and the way that you do your healing work is that you bring a lot of playful spirit to it. And I think that play is really important, especially when it comes to cultivating intuition and healing.
Yeah, totally. I'm kind of jokey and silly, but then I'm also kind of pretty intense as well. So perhaps the jokey energy helps to like relax, you know, dealing with death and trauma and stuff that people go through is pretty hardcore. So maybe it makes it a little easier for things to move sometimes, you know, and also just being able to articulate things, you know, like, you know, just, I don't even know. I'm trying to think of something out of the blue, but just, it's hard sometimes. Like I'll totally see where someone needs help, but I'm not even sure I can articulate it for them or if they can hear me. And if they can't hear me, then it's not really helpful if I can see what's wrong, you know? So I think a lot of that's part of the process is using humor and a lightness energy to kind of help with that.
Mm-hmm. And I'm remembering you used to host an event in Brooklyn called Craft Magic. And I wonder if that was part of the intention there was to have people doing art as healing. I
would bring a granny cart filled with glitter and glue and porn and all kinds of crazy magazines into a bar. And the bar would pay me to be there for most of the day. And I would get people excited about making art and just make collages. Sometimes we'd have projects, sometimes we'd do other things. But it was really, really fun. And I really miss that. But I've been thinking about kind of restarting that in a different way, maybe not inside a bar, but just inside a more neutral space where anyone can come and have a thing. So I'm planning on restarting that actually.
Yeah. And it was at a gay bar, I think, right?
Yeah, it was a Metropolitan Bar in Williamsburg.
Yeah. I remember every time you posted about it on Facebook, I was so jealous that I wasn't there to be able to participate.
Oh my God. Yeah, well, you know, I mean, it's real easy to do. And it's just so fun because all you got to do is bring some crazy supplies and then start, you know, kind of show people that it's okay to make art. I mean, I was actually teaching a workshop upstate on healing symbols, and I would have people intuit their own healing symbols to create a way to connect to spirit for very personal healing, you know? And this one woman burst into tears because she got beat up by nuns when she was a kid for drawing on a piece of paper, you know, and the nuns were like, you're wasting this paper. And they smacked her around with a ruler. And it was just so sad. I mean, I think a lot of people are afraid to express themselves in that way. So I definitely want to inspire people to feel safe around making art.
And something else that we wanted to talk a little bit about was bringing healing into everyday life, not just making it like, now we're going into the healing space and we're going to see the healer and we're going to do this serious thing. That it can be playful, but it can also be something that's just part of like walking down the street or hanging out with a friend.
Yeah, I had a really powerful experience actually just last night where I was someone and we were in bed, like getting it on, me and this guy, and just something was completely off. And I wasn't horny enough to kind of ignore what was off, you know? So I said, if you just give me a minute, I need to lie down next to you and don't touch me just for a couple minutes. And I kind of tuned into my own space. I talked to my angels and there was something going on with me that was in the way. Like, I don't know what it was. I won't go into specific details about my process, but I cleaned out a few chakras and kind of just cleared myself a little bit. And then I looked at him and I said, do you mind if I do some healing work with you? And he was like, no, fine. And I saw just a lot of drama with his ex inside his head. And so I just kind of did my thing where I kind of go inside the body, but not so much like a medical intuitive, more like an energy thing. And I lifted his ex out of his head. And then I saw a corresponding thing going on in his pelvis that related to his ex. And so I cleared that. And then, of course, I had angels, I had everybody, and it was like a blessing. And he was like, wow, I don't know what you did, but I feel pretty stellar right now. And then we had like the best fucking sex ever, you know? So it was a total application of healing work, you know? I'm just so glad that I took that moment to check in with myself. I'm glad that he was receptive. You know, I kind of took a risk with that and he was into it. So, you know, it's kind of fun to realize that you can manipulate your world or get healing where you need it. You know,
other ways that you use healing work just in your everyday life in sort of a mundane level?
You know, I live in New York City and I'm often disappointed in situations like I get on the subway and there's drama on the train so I'm really, because New York is such a crazy place and there's so much going on, I tend to set intentions about where I go. So if I'm going to the bank, I intend that the line's going to be short and I'm going to have fun and meet fun people. And sure enough, I end up joking with the teller or I run into some crazy people or people with kids or whatever, you know. If I'm going to go see my family, I intend that we're all laughing and joking because my family can be very, gosh, I got to be careful what I say here. Well, they're little stone-faced sometimes. Like I'm sort of the butterfly of the family and they're all kind of like these heavy energies. So I just intend that we're all going to laugh. And I really do a lot of that, of setting intentions that everything's going to be good, everything's going to be safe. Because if something crazy happens to me, I tend to get lost in it, you know, and it throws me off my perch and I might have to go give a session or do something. I want to be in a good space, you know?
Yeah. And
it's not to say that I'm not welcoming the uncomfortable or I'm not just open to what happens and willing to flow with it. I'm just kind of setting up an assurance that me and the angels are setting an intention that life is good and things are going to be good, you know?
Yeah, well, you just, like everyone else, want to have joy in your life.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with having that intention.
Yeah, I mean, New York is like you know how suddenly those stories of people who are in the placid, like they're out on a boat and suddenly a storm comes up, you know? And I feel like New York is like that. Like you're somewhere and suddenly this drama just happens in your space and it's really crazy, you know?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So my thing with the subway is I say like, this is an ashram on wheels, you know? And that's sort of the prayer fantasy I have about that, you know? So y'all should try that out there on your buses and trains. Be like, okay, this is an ashram on wheels. Only the most sacred people are on this train with me and everyone's here to spread joy. Because it actually brings out the best in people. It brings out those qualities in people.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean when I've been on buses and there's just, you know, people who are getting a little bit rowdy or people who maybe have mental health issues and causing disruptions on the bus and upsetting people and that kind of thing can be a little challenging.
Yeah, yeah.
So speaking of being out in the wider world, something else that you've talked about is this idea that we as beings in the world at this time are in something called the truth time. And
yes.
What is that about?
I call it the truth time because what it is we're in the age of Aquarius, and the age of Aquarius began in 2012, but now it's really up and running. So you have all this stuff going on and all the evil people or the people who are not doing so good, or people who are compromising other people's realities in one way or another, are the lights being shown on them and all the veils are being lifted. So you have like, the celebrities that are being called out for being inappropriate or the sexual stuff, and you have the Me Too movement, and all that is part of that truth energy that's now happening. And I have a lot of clients lately who are kind of having mini nervous breakdowns because on some level they have compromised their own lives by lying to themselves in one way or another. And I'll say, like, I'll use an example. If you're someone who looks in the mirror in the morning and you go, oh my God, I hate my eyebrows, like, that's really not going to be okay in the truth time that we're in now. It's just not okay anymore because we need to love ourselves and have compassion for the way that we look and our morphology, and know that we're divine beings, that we're created. We have these bodies. Let's use these bodies to do fabulous things, So it's just, if someone's been lying to themselves for years, like they're in a crappy job, pretending that they like it and using drugs and alcohol to like make everything okay, this is a time where you're going to be really challenged, and it's time to put down your drugs or whatever it is and really tell the truth about how much you hate your job, and then walk out of there and create something new that is really serving you so that you can serve humanity. So I feel like the truth time right now is like the best news in the world. It's the best thing that could have ever happened to any of us. But sometimes it's very challenging when this awareness is coming up to you abruptly. So a lot of people are freaking out. So I sort of do my truth time, a disclaimer to all my new clients, because I just want, and the secret, the way to process that energy is to just have an intense self-compassion, and that's a new conversation for some people, to really love yourself. If you're walking down the street and a little kid is running in front of you and they fall and hurt their knee or something, you would rush over to them and you'd say, oh my God, are you okay? You would pick them up, you'd dust them off, you'd look for their parents. You might even hug them and say, you're going to be okay. I'm here for you. And then that simple way of being is something that we don't even do to ourselves. When we make a mistake sometimes, or we do something wrong, we tend to scold ourselves. And that becomes like a normal, the way of being quite cruel to ourselves. So then when we have to go and look inside our own hearts and try to figure things out about ourselves, we're sort of afraid of ourselves. And everything becomes like this jittery mess. And that's when you come to see me. And I'm going to get you straight, brother. I'm going to help you, But the thing is like, we have to really become compassionate beings so that we can see the struggle in each other and help each other through this time. And then the truth becomes your friend. It's like everything's good. I hope I've explained it good.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I think that what I see a lot with my clients and my therapy practice is, as you said, this harsh self-criticism. And in some ways, people are being, the worst to themselves than they are to anyone else in their life, or anyone else is being to them in their life. And I think that you're right on by saying tuning into cultivating self-compassion is really helpful in order to feel better about yourself and be better to other people.
It's the way out. And people are cruel to themselves, reasoning that that's a solution. And how could that possibly be a solution? But we all do it. So we got to flip that script, and start loving ourselves and loving each other. That's the healing right there.
Yeah, I think there can be a line between strong self-discipline and beating yourself up.
Yeah.
So Hank, can you share with us a person, practice, or experience that has supported your queer spirit to flourish?
A friend pops in my mind, and she's someone who was like I have had a lot of surrogate mothers throughout my life. And she's somebody who, this story is like popped into my head. And it's like somebody who taught me how to laugh at myself. And we were driving up to Lilydale, which is like this psychic town in upstate New York, which I highly recommend. It's kind of like this really little weird town with lots of gnomes everywhere. And it's kind of like kitschy and like Disneyland, but also really cool. And so we were on our way driving there, and we stopped at a gas station. And I got out and I got some potato chips and soda or whatever. And she got out and she got a couple of things. And then we got back in the car and we drove away. And she was like laughing to herself. She's like, oh my God, I forgot to get gas. And she was laughing at herself. She's like this fun, crazy hippie lady that I just love to death. She's such a sweetheart, and I was so confused because had it been me, I really would have beat myself up. I would have been like, you moron, like what the hell would you go to that place for except to get gas, And I was so impressed with her ability to laugh at herself. And we turned around and we went back and we got gas. And I think that was like a shift for me in realizing like not to take life so seriously, like life is serendipitous and silly and it's all going to work out,
So Hank, where can people find out more about your work and connect with you?
Well, I have a website. It's hankhivnor.com. My last name is HIV as in Victor, N-O-R, hankhivnor.com. And you can check out my art on the site. I also make hats. I have a lot of things going on. I kind of put everything on the same website. I have events. I teach classes on psychic development. And then I want to incorporate teaching art and maybe some art therapy type stuff. I would love to teach the healing symbols class again. That's really powerful. All this stuff is just to help people feel empowered and like they're running their lives. The world's not running you, you're running it. Or I don't know, maybe it's like a connection, sort of stepping out of the fear-based reality and stepping into a place of empowerment, using creativity and spirit. Yeah, that's pretty much my thing, man.
Well, thank you for being here and sharing about your work and your gifts that you're bringing to the world.
Yeah, I'm absolutely delighted and thrilled. Thank you so much, Nick. You're a sweetie.
I work with many queer folks who struggle to get their needs met or who suffer from having their boundaries violated by others. Because you may not have been cared for the best, you might have a hard time identifying your needs. Or because you have been violated or bullied, you might not completely understand where exactly your boundaries are. If you'd like some help exploring your needs and building more resilient boundaries, head over to my website and download the free guide, Needs, Boundaries, and Self-Care Support for Queer Folks. This is a short introduction to help you start to shift and change your relationship to yourself and others, and to feel more safe and resourced day to day. So just head over to queerhealingjourneys.com/needs to download your free guide today. To find the resources we discussed today, find the show notes at thequeerspirit.com. And if you enjoyed the show, remember to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes. This will help us reach and support more queer people all over. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.